Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather, 16th day of January 2021. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got hazardous weather graphic 1 of 2, and we'll start there along the Alaska Range. That's yellow for a wind advisory. And that kicks into effect 3 a.m. Sunday morning, late tonight, and continues through tomorrow and through tomorrow night until 7 a.m. Monday. And that's for expecting south to southeast winds to come up. Some cases might even be more easterly, especially to begin with. But winds coming up 30 to 40 miles an hour, gusts to 65 miles an hour, again from 3 a.m. Sunday, 7 a.m. Monday to 7 a.m. Monday. And off to the south there, for eastern Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, and North Gulf Coast, west of Cape St. Elias, into the greater Anchorage area, including Turnagain Arm and the upper hillside, higher elevations. That's a high wind watch, and that goes into effect late Sunday night, continues through Monday afternoon. That big storm rolling up, and looking for winds to increase. Gusts 75 miles an hour, higher elevations, Turnagain Arm, and again in the entire shaded area there for the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, eastern Kenai Peninsula. And let's see, out west, we've got a blizzard warning for the Alaska Peninsula, and that's out until noon Sunday, definitely through tonight until noon Sunday, and for the blizzard weather that's going on out there currently, especially in some areas, worse than others. King Cove, for example, seeing gusts to 75 miles an hour with near whiteout conditions, snow and blowing snow. And that'll continue through tonight, gradually improve late tonight into tomorrow. Winds will start to come down, and looking for several inches of new snow, and that'll create visibilities at least less than a quarter mile at times in areas of the Alaska Peninsula, mostly this evening and overnight tonight, improving tomorrow. And that's it for the watches, warnings, advisories. So satellite imagery showing a band of cloud associated with actually a couple of low pressure centers there, one south of the Alaska Peninsula, and it looks like another one there nearer just to the east of Kodiak Island in the cloud pattern there. And that pushing moisture northward. But you can see the cloud features are breaking up as they move inland, becoming kind of shredded by the mountainous terrain, breaks, holes in it. But precipitation, not all that heavy. Respectable Kodiak Island picked about an inch of precipitation in the last 12 hours, ending at 3 p.m. That was accompanied by winds of gusting to 50 miles an hour out of the east there at Kodiak State Airport to go along with the moderate to heavy rain, briefly heavy rain. And heaviest precipitation occurred along the southern panhandle today with, Metlakatla picking about 1.05 inches of rain, again during that 12-hour period, while, Craig had an inch even. And by contrast, Yakutat only had 0.03 of an inch of precipitation there. And the North Gulf Coast kind of varied. Kenai Peninsula area, Kenai Lake had about 0.6 of an inch of liquid water equivalent. Started out as snow, changed to rain during the day today, with temperatures rising into the upper 30s there at Kenai Lake. Otherwise, Seldovia picked about 1/3 of an inch with only 0.04 of an inch at Homer. And out west, snowfall amounts were on the rather light side, a couple inches falling at Cold Bay today, and maybe 1 to 2 inches areas of the southwest interior there. Most areas had less, and that heavier amounts, which were no more than a couple inches over the mountainous terrain. Otherwise, rolling this again, you can see cold air continuing to come southward over the Bering Sea, central and eastern Bering Sea. Well, those northerly winds, very gusty, very strong there across the Alaska Peninsula. As I mentioned, King Cove gusts 75 miles per hour this afternoon, and it looked like their anemometer either broke or got gunked up with snow because they hadn't had a report for a couple hours on the wind. Visibility still quite low. And gusts to about, AKwx Island, 60 miles an hour. Dutch Harbor, gusts to 50 miles an hour, and 40 to 50 miles an hour for Cold Bay area. And 40 to 50 mile an hour wind gusts, up 45 miles an hour for St. George Island, and 30 to 40 mile an hour winds out of the northeast, St. Lawrence Island, Bering Strait coast, maybe to Point Hope there, but probably less than that. Dry over the northern interior, some mid and high level clouds spilling into the central interior, north of the Alaska Range, and some clearing looks like coming up just off the south coast there, Prince of Wales Island, mostly down around the Queen Charlotte Islands, and maybe a little bit of clearing out over the Aleutians with numerous snow showers. And for the chart here, you can see low pressure pulling up near the Alaska Peninsula, and that front elongated out, approaching the North Gulf Coast there, with gusts 55 miles an hour at Middleton Island and Cape Decision, Cape Spencer along the Panhandle there. Two of the normally windier areas seeing gusts of 55 miles an hour at Cape Decision there on the south coast, farther north Cape Spencer, gusts 45. And Barren Island seeing winds gusting 62 miles an hour, peak wind gusts there, Amatilli Island. And then out west again, the strong winds on the backside of that system out of the north, tight gradient there actually from the southwest coast. Anywhere from 40 to 55 miles an hour. And again, the western Alaska Peninsula gusts to 75 miles an hour. But you can see the gradient slackens off as you head north and then tightens up again there for the western Arctic coast to about Point Hope, Cape Lisburne. Numerous snow showers out over the Bering Sea, snow blowing snow Alaska Peninsula and the southwest coast. And for tonight, that front weakens as it tries to push farther north. Areas of light precipitation come inland, higher elevation snow farther south, and the lower elevations, of course, they'll be tend to mix with rain or become just flat out rain, or remain rain for Kodiak Island, but it'll be much lighter and a little more showery with diminishing winds, and wet from the North Gulf Coast and the Panhandle as well. Still that frontal boundary off the coast there, and the blizzard warning continues for the Alaska Peninsula. Dry over the central interior, well, actually dry all the way up, maybe a risk of some flurries central Arctic coast, ridging, improving weather, kind of a break there for the central Aleutians. Next system pushing increasing wind and precipitation in the western Aleutians. That pushes eastward tomorrow, and heaviest will stay west of AKwx, heaviest snowfall with that system as south to southeast winds start to increase and eventually push the temperatures back above freezing. And less wind, as you can see, less gradient for the Alaska Peninsula, but still cold air coming southward on those north-northwest winds will be much lighter and the snow will diminish. Blizzard warning will end at least by noon. And you can see that next system there south of the, well south of Kodiak Island, 990 millibars, and quite an extensive area of moisture pushing northward associated with that warm front. And it'll stay wet and unsettled due to continued southerly flow. Precipitation may shut off over the southern panhandle, some ridging possibly. Optimistically, and then gale force winds with that front pushing into the western Aleutians, not making it to those winds not making it to AKwx at least through tomorrow afternoon, but they will tomorrow night and then come down behind the front considerably on Monday as that front weakens and elongates out. Weak low develops southwest of the Pribilof, so rain and snow and gusty winds into the eastern Aleutians. And northwest winds not all that strong for the Alaska Peninsula, but big storm rolls up in southern Cook Inlet. And again, the high wind watch out for the Kenai Peninsula and Prince William Sound, Anchorage area, higher elevations, and storm warnings ahead of that front for the North Gulf Coast into the northern Panhandle as well as Cook Inlet. And for lows tonight, mid-30s to lower 40s under mild southerly flow for the Panhandle, and in the 30s for the North Gulf Coast, about 5 Copper River Basin. And anywhere from quite a contrast there along dividing line, the Alaska Range, -2 Nikolai McGrath to 20s, lower 30s east of the Alaska Range and south of the mountains. Up north, below 0, 5 to 15 below for the most part, maybe down toward 20 below North Slope possibly. And let's see, tomorrow morning lows for the Bering Sea. 19 for the Pribilof, 3 below St. Lawrence Island, in the 20s for the Aleutians, and mid to upper 20s for the Alaska Peninsula, but mid-30s Kodiak Island. And highs tomorrow, lower 40s for the southeast coast, near 40 for Kodiak, lower 40s Kachemak Bay, Homer, Seldovia, Port Moller, teens Copper River Basin, mid to upper 30s south central Alaska. And highs in the teens central interior, 10 to 15, but windy areas tending to rise. And then high temperature Sunday afternoon out west 20s and 30s, and lows Monday morning teens for the Copper River Basin, and again near zero central interior, a little below zero for the Arctic coast, maybe 10 to 15 below, and out west 18 for the Pribilofs, below zero St. Lawrence Island, 20s for the Aleutians, and highs mid to upper 40s for the Panhandle, mid to upper 30s south central Alaska, mid 20s Tanana Valley for the highs, and near zero or a little below for the Arctic coast and North Slope, near zero for your high St. Lawrence Island, teens for the Seward Peninsula, and mid 30s central Aleutians near freezing for Shimmy and Attu's the Pribilofs, and 30s for the Alaska Peninsula.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic Sunday morning. We've got marginal VFR and areas of IFR. They're from the Bering Strait into northern Seward Peninsula, North Slope, Arctic coast, mostly marginal VFR, that IFR zone right off the west coast there, and some VFR central interior, eastern Brooks Range into the greater Fairbanks area. But then off to the east there, over the upper Tanana Valley 40 mile country, we've got some IFR just south of Eagle to about North Wayne-Toke, and zone of IFR, southern slopes of the central Alaska range and also the eastern slopes of the western Alaska range, and pretty extensive there, southern Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, eastward in across most of the Panhandle, but becoming marginal there from about Port Alexander on down across Prince of Wales Island, IFR, Kodiak Island, and Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, into the southwest interior, Kuskokwim Bay Valley, or southern Kuskokwim Valley to the Kuskokwim Mountains, and marginal for the Aleutians and Bering Sea. Sunday afternoon, next front out west, they're pushing a mediocre band of IFR into the western Aleutian, southwest Bering Sea. Got some VFR breaking out. Weak ridging there south of St. Lawrence Island to near Nunavak Island, otherwise mostly marginal for the remainder of the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. IFR improving, as you can see, as the blizzard warning ends at midday, or at least by noon tomorrow for the Alaska Peninsula. Bristol Bay holding IFR into the west-southwest interior, including the Kuskokwim Valley. IFR up along and east of the Alaska Range, southern slopes of the central Alaska Range. VFR central interior due to downsloping off the mountains. IFR not quite as extensive, but holding North Gulf Coast, eastern Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound into the northern Panhandle and on down the east side. Brooks Range, areas of IFR, otherwise marginal up there in the north. And for Monday morning, that frontal boundary weakening, at least the IFR zone part of it, really narrowing out as it pushes eastward and generally leaving the Bering Sea and Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula in the marginal VFR category on up to St. Lawrence Island. IFR for the western interior, all the way from Bristol Bay and Iliamna Lake right up to the western central Arctic coast and all of the southern slopes of the Brooks Range. VFR, a narrow band there from upper Yukon Valley into the White Mountains there toward Tanana possibly. IFR again along the Alaska Range, especially central and western mountains. Kenai Peninsula, North Gulf Coast, definitely an IFR pattern there. Kodiak Island as well into the Panhandle, continuing south and southeast flow. And for the afternoon, a little bit of improvement, but still quite an area of IFR there from western Cook Inlet down to the Aleutian Range, up across the Kuskokwim Valley, west or northwestward to eastern Norton Sound, and right up along the northwest coast, Selawik Valley, Kobuk Valley, much of the North Slope and central and western Arctic coast, marginal for the far eastern Beaufort Sea coastline, and then scattered areas of EFR and IFR up over the northeast interior areas, marginal for Kodiak Island, and mostly marginal for the Bering Sea and Aleutians. And Atuvik and Adigan, IFR conditions tomorrow on either approach. Lake Clark and Merrill, lowest conditions on the eastern entrance, likely IFR, especially into the afternoon. Same pattern for rainy, so IFR eastern entrance, otherwise marginal. Windy, south side IFR, possibly VFR out the northern entrance into the valley. Isabel, same pattern, IFR southern approach. And Mentasta, marginal VFR, VFR on the north entrance. And for Tanita, marginal VFR at times, especially eastern approach, lowest conditions there. Portage, IFR, eastern entrance. And Chilkoot and White, IFR, freezing levels at the surface near or just south of the Aleutians, and then right along the Alaska Peninsula, North Gulf Coast, and again cutting across the Panhandle, 2,000 feet up in the Gulf of Alaska to Kamishak Bay, northern Kodiak Island. Icing, areas of considerable moderate rime or possibly mixed icing, northern Prince William Sound, eastern North Gulf Coast, northern Panhandle, and possibly with that weakening front out over the western Aleutians. Jet stream, upper level low south of the Alaska Peninsula, that's going to be actually generating that next big storm rolling up tomorrow night and Monday from south to north. You can see a strong jet associated with that. 9,000 feet northwest, 45 to 55 knots there, eastern Aleutians, central Bering Sea Pribilofs. And 3,000 feet, southwest 50 Kodiak, 40 to 45, still out of the northwest, and then stronger winds with that front out west. Turbulence, moderate chop, western central Aleutians to Adak and Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, North Gulf Coast, and areas of the Copper River Basin and Alaska Range.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, joined again by Eric Stevens from the GINA, or Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Thanks for joining us again, Eric.
Glad to be here.
Thanks. We are talking about satellites today, and what are satellites? And the easy way to talk about that would be to introduce our friend the globe here, which is a round spheroid type shape. We haven't been on a flat Earth as far as history is known for several hundred years now, and because of that we also know that we are orbiting around other objects in space, and that objects are orbiting around the Earth as well. We call all those things satellites in some form or fashion, right, Eric?
Right. Well, this leads to the discussion of Johannes Kepler's research 400 years ago. Did some of the early work and founded the 3 laws of planetary motion, which are important to planets and also to weather satellites.
Okay.
Kepler's first law talks about how the orbit of an object around another object is an ellipse, not necessarily a circle.
It's kind of a flattened circle?
Yeah, depending on how flat
squished
it could be.
Okay.
For our purposes, we'll just say they're mostly circular.
Okay.
The second law is most important for us, though, and that is the closer an object is to the thing it's orbiting, the faster it goes. So in the solar system, the planet Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. It orbits the sun in 88 days. It moves at 100,000 kilometers an hour.
It's a lot different than Earth.
Moving.
Okay.
Right. And further out from the Earth is Jupiter, and it moves at only 1/4 the speed of Mercury, and it has to go further, so it takes 12 of our years for Jupiter to make one lap. The further out you are, the slower you go.
Okay.
So we're talking about planets. What does it have to do with weather satellites? Turns out Kepler's laws apply to planets orbiting the sun. They also apply to satellites orbiting the Earth.
Okay.
You know, our natural satellite is the moon. There's the famous Apollo 8 Earthrise shot.
Beautiful shot.
Oh, yeah, you could just talk about that forever. December 1968, the moon is about 250,000 miles away from the Earth.
Okay.
It takes a month to go around the Earth. It's that far out, it takes a full month to do an orbit. Another shot here of the International Space Station. Instead of being 250,000 miles out, the ISS is only 250 miles up. It's really close. And so it doesn't take a full month for the space station to go around the Earth. It only takes 90 minutes. It's so close, it just whips right around 90 minutes.
Okay.
So weather satellites, there are a number of weather satellites, and there are a number of orbits. The further out you have the satellite, the longer it takes to go around the Earth. And this is important because different satellites have different purposes. So we have a satellite here. This little salt shaker lid will serve as our satellite going around the Earth. Let's say you have a satellite that's 22,000 miles above the Earth. This is kind of a magical spot because at that distance, it takes a full day for the satellite to go around the Earth. Imagine if you put your satellite 22,000 miles up from the equator and had it go with the Earth as the Earth spun.
The same speed.
Right.
Okay.
The satellite goes around the Earth just as fast as the Earth itself is turning. In effect, the satellite will hover in one spot.
I see.
And it appears when you make a movie loop of picture after picture after picture, you can replay that and you get these movie loops. Geostationary satellites, these are called, because they're stationary in appearance, and they provide a constant frame of reference. We've got an example here. Another nice thing about these satellites, since they're that far out at 22,000 miles, you can see from pole to pole, which is nice. So they're pretty broad view and a constant frame of reference.
So those are the pictures, if you're watching a weather satellite loop on TV, your favorite weather show, that's the picture that you're going to see is one that's sitting over the same spot.
If you're seeing a movie loop play again and again, that came from geostationary satellites.
Okay.
That's the only way you can do that.
Yeah.
The bummer, though, for us in Alaska is we're up on the very top of the planet. And for geostationary satellites to work, they have to be over the equator. So for the geostationary bird to view Alaska, it's kind of like reading a book, but you're reading it edge on like that.
Right.
So there's another kind of orbit called the polar orbit,
Okay.
which is nice. We're near the pole.
Yeah.
And here's a satellite. Those polar orbiters are much closer to the Earth, getting down toward International Space Station elevation. And they're not in the equatorial plane. Rather, their orbital plane is inclined like this. And the Earth turns under that satellite as the satellite orbits. The nice thing about that is for Alaska, the satellite will go right over Alaska a few times a day. And so you get a much closer image. We've got a shot from the Sumi NPP satellite. Specifically, it's a true color image from the VIRS sensor. That's an acronym there.
Okay.
But it's a beautiful shot of Alaska, and you can see so much detail. The kind of detail, because you're close in,
Very high resolution.
you couldn't get this kind of view from geostationary satellites. The advantage of these polar orbiters is nice close imagery. You can see a lot of detail. The disadvantage, though, is that the satellite flies by,
Right.
and then you have to wait a while to get the next image. And if geostationary weaknesses are that you're reading the page like that, the polar orbiter, you're reading the page straight on, but it's so close, and then it zips by, and you have to wait for the satellite to come around the Earth again. So there's no one perfect solution. Different satellites for different orbits, each has their strength, and amazingly, it all comes back to Johannes Kepler and his laws of planetary motion. The same laws that govern how the planets orbit the sun, they govern how the satellites orbit the Earth, and even our little pretend salt shaker right here.
Right. Okay. Well, since the 1957 Sputnik, we've been putting man-made objects into orbit around the Earth and starting to get pictures back. Who knows what will happen in the next 50 to 100 years? Amazing
it's
stuff.
a growing science, and the future is bright.
Thank you so much for joining us again, Eric. And for more information on GINA and what the satellite systems do there and what Eric's been talking about today, you can go to the web address on your screen. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. Over the last several days, week or so, quite an expansion there of the sea ice, especially over the northern Bering Sea and along the Yukon Delta coast, even the Kuskokwim Delta coast. Bristol Bay, the heavier ice not really that significant yet, but the thinner ice there showing increases, and to a lesser extent for Cook Inlet. And that'll continue the pattern will continue until the winds change direction. So moving on to the coastal water forecast, small craft advisories there for the entire stretch of the coastline tomorrow. The Panhandle, south-southwest or mostly southwest, 25 to 30 knots, seas about 16 feet or so. Central southern inside waters, south to southeast 20 knots, 4-foot seas. Lynn Canal, stronger winds, south 25, small craft advisories there with gale force gusts to 40 knots again from the south. And then small craft advisory, central northern inside waters of the Panhandle, southeast 25 knots. Gale warnings, Clarence Straits, southeast 35 knots, 10-foot seas. South 45 knots, full gales for the south coast, seas 22 feet. Storm warnings on the north coast for southeast winds at 50 knots with seas up to 25 feet. And Prince William Sound tomorrow, small craft advisory, southeast winds 25 knots. North Gulf Coast, southerlies at 30 knots. Same thing for the Barren Islands, south winds 30 knots, small craft advisories for Kamishak Bay, east winds 30 knots, northeast 25, for southern Cook Inlet, northern Cook Inlet, northeast of 25-foot seas. And then for Monday, big increase in the winds, all areas, good full storm force winds in the forecast eastern North Gulf Coast. From the south, 60 knots, 31-foot seas. Prince William Sound, storm warning, southeast 50 knots, 13-foot seas, and southwest 50 knots, southeast 50 for Prince William Sound, southwest 50 for the western North Gulf Coast, 27-foot seas, and just under storm force of the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay from the west-northwest, 45 knots, storm warning, southern Cook Inlet, northwest 50 knots, 20-foot seas, gale warnings, northern Cook Inlet for 35-knot winds from the north. And Shelikof Strait, south, 25 knots. Small craft advisories, east side of Kodiak Island, 30 knots, all the way down to Castle Cape, and then get into the gales, west, 35 knots, Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev, and the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, northwest winds 40 knots, 17-foot seas. Bristol Bay, light wind area out of the bunch tomorrow, southwest at 20 with 4-foot seas. Pick it up to small craft advisories for Bristol Bay on Monday. southwest 30 knots, south 30 for the top side of the Alaska Peninsula. Pacific side, southwest 35, that's good for gales, and then 45 knots southwest winds there, Castle Cape to Sitkinak. Westerlies 50 knots, higher gusts out of the bays there for the east side of Kodiak Island, and west 40 for Shelikof Strait. And out over the western Aleutians, Chimyatu to Kiska, southeast 45 knots. Gale warnings also for Amchitka Island, south 40 knots. Small craft advisories, Adak and Atka, west-northwest at 25. Small craft advisories for the Fox Islands, northwest 30 knots with seas running 13 to 17 feet. Monday, small craft advisories for the Fox Islands, now south to maybe southwest at 30 knots with 15 to 20 foot seas. Small crafts continue for the Adak-Atka area, southwest 25 to 30 knots, and 30 knots from Amchitka. Gale warnings for Kiska, Chimyatu, southwest 35. Southwest coast, gale warning south of Nunivak Island, northwest 35 knots, northwest 30 there for the Pribilofs, north 20 St. Matthew Island. Small craft brisk wind advisories, St. Lawrence Island and the Yukon Delta coast for 25 knot winds, north-northwest. And lighter winds for St. Lawrence Island down to 15 knots on Monday. Northeast or east-northeast, 30 knots for the southwest coast. And gale warning St. Matthew Island, northeast 35, Pribilof south of 20. And central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast for tomorrow, east winds 20 knots, picking up to northeast 30 knots on the west side. Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, gale warnings northeast 35, Cape Thompson to Wales, north at 30 for brisk wind advisories. Those will fall back to 15 knots from Wales to Cape Thompson on Monday. So brisk wind advisories from Cape Thompson and all the way over to, say, Prudhoe Bay or so at 25 knots, and then 20 knot winds to demarcation point. For tonight, weakening front. Weakens are pushing into the southern interior. Areas of mixed precipitation, light, all light. Blizzard warning for the Alaska Peninsula until noon tomorrow for up to 8 to 12 inches of new snow and near whiteout conditions. Winds gusting 65 miles an hour, and continues wet for the Panhandle. Ridging over the central Aleutians head in the next system kind of weakens tomorrow, and big storm rolls up into southern Cook Inlet Monday afternoon.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.